Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever find yourself in a conversation and wonder if your smartwatch could tell you we're talking to someone? Or maybe you've thought about how much our phones and wearables know about us? Well, today we're diving into a fascinating study about how smartwatches can actually detect when we're having social interactions, all while keeping our conversations private. Think about it, social interactions are super important for our happiness and health, but usually we have to remember to write them down or tell someone later, which can be tricky and not always accurate. What if a device could just know you were interacting? This paper called SocialPulse explores exactly that. They wanted to see if a smartwatch could figure out if someone was talking to another person, whether it was in person, over the phone, or even a mix of both. And importantly, they wanted to do it without actually storing or sending any private conversations. So, what is the big deal? Well, previous research often happens in a lab, or it assumes a lot of things that don't happen in real life, like assuming someone is always talking in a group, or that there are always at least two people. Plus, a lot of systems might upload all your audio, which is a big privacy concern. SocialPulse aimed to solve these problems by being a smart private system that works in the real world. The first big piece of their puzzle was creating a really good way to detect when someone is actually speaking, what they call foreground speech detection. Imagine your smartwatch listening, but only picking up your voice as important, not the background noise or someone else talking on television. They trained a special program to do this using over 100,000 examples of speech and background sounds. And guess what? It was pretty darn good, hitting about 85.51% accuracy. That is even better than some previous attempts. This is a crucial first step, because if you can't even reliably tell when someone is talking, you can't detect an interaction. Then they took this system out into the wild. They had 38 people wear a smartwatch for a total of over 900 hours. That's a lot of real-life data. The watch would record little snippets of audio and other sensor data, but it wouldn't save the raw conversations. Instead, it processed them right there on the watch. During this time, the system automatically spotted 1,691 potential interactions. The amazing part is that participants confirmed over 77% of these. And get this, these interactions weren't just quick chats. They ranged from less than a minute all the way up to over an hour long. This shows the system is really capturing what is happening in people's normal lives. It also found that most of these interactions were in person, but a good chunk were also virtual calls or a mix of both, really reflecting how we communicate today. But they didn't stop there. To make the system even faster and more useful for things like apps that need to react instantly, they created another model that could predict an interaction in just a 15-second window. This model, using mostly audio data, was incredibly accurate, hitting over 90%. This is super important because it means the watch doesn't have to wait a long time to figure out if an interaction is happening. It can predict it much quicker. And here's a really cool finding: even when they only used audio and ignored other smartwatch sensors like heart rate or movement, the accuracy was still incredibly high. This tells us that sound is the biggest clue for detecting social interactions. This is great news because it means we might not need super fancy sensors for this to work well. So, what does all this mean for us? Well, this research is a big step towards creating smarter devices that can understand our social lives without being intrusive. Imagine a mental health app that knows when you're feeling lonely and could offer support, or a system that schedules notifications for you when you're not in the middle of a conversation. The really big win here is that it all happens on the watch itself. This means your raw audio isn't being sent off to a server. It is processed locally and then discarded, making it much more private. This is a huge deal when we think about all the data our wearables collect. They've also shown it can detect not just face-to-face chats, but also phone calls and video calls, which are a huge part of our social lives now. This moves beyond older systems that were more limited. And because it's designed to run on a smartwatch, it's built to be efficient, meaning it won't drain your battery too quickly. It is a clever balance of being smart without being a power hog. On top of all this, they've decided to share their data and code. That's a big plus for other researchers who want to build on this work. Now, like any study, there are things to consider. They mentioned that the system is best at detecting interactions that involve sound. So, if you are texting someone, it won't pick that up. Also, they did most of their testing with university students. So we need to be a bit careful about assuming it works exactly the same for everyone, in every situation. We also need to remember that, while their system is great, there is always a chance of errors. especially if there is a lot of background noise or if you forget to wear your watch. They used what they call duty cycle sensing, meaning it records in short bursts rather than constantly. This is great for saving battery and privacy, but it could potentially miss super short interactions that happen between those bursts. But overall, this is really exciting work. It shows us that our smartwatches are getting smarter and they can understand our social world in meaningful ways, all while respecting our privacy. The idea of a device that can adapt to your social context without constantly sending your private conversations somewhere else is a huge leap forward for both our technology and our well-being. This could lead to all sorts of helpful apps in the future, from mental health support to just making our devices more understanding of when to chime in and when to stay quiet. What do you think about smartwatches listening in to detect conversations? Does it seem helpful or a bit creepy? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more science made simple. We'll see you in the next one.